this morning's online Bible study. Whether you're tuning in at Twitter or Periscope at BibleStudyCam, whether you're on Facebook.com/reflective Bible study, whether you're on YouTube at The Online Preacher, or even at theonlinepreacher.com/live, wherever you happen to be tuning in, first off, welcome, and I hope that this morning's Bible study will be a blessing to you. And this morning, we're going to be focusing in on Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30, and talking about an event where it appears as though Jesus is very unchristlike. Jesus is healing people and helping people, but then somebody comes along and Jesus responds in a very abnormal and untypical way. So let's read what happens and what happens when Jesus responds differently than what many people might have expected him to. This is Mark chapter 7. We're going to start in verse 24, and I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre. He didn't want anyone to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it a secret. Right away, a woman who had heard about him came and fell at his feet. Her little girl was possessed by an evil spirit, and she begged him to cast the demon out from her daughter. Since she was a Gentile, born in Syrian Phoenicia, Jesus told her, "First, I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." She replied, "That's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates." "Good answer," he said. "Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter." And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. Now, this is one of those events that is challenging and fascinating in my mind, because on the surface, it seems as though Jesus does something that is ridiculous and, at least by today's standards, incredibly insensitive and even politically incorrect. It's as though Jesus says, hey, you are of a lower class citizen and in a lower class gender, you could say, because the society in that time elevated men above women as well as Jews above Gentiles. You are several steps below the elite. And while we might think of Jesus kind of pushing off all of that hierarchy, you could say, it appears as though, at least in this situation, he kind of falls into the same line as the hierarchy, looking down and saying, no, I'm not going to help you because there's these other people who need help. But while it seems as though Jesus does this, and it seems very uncharacteristic of what we would think of a loving God doing, there's three different ideas that I can come up with, or thoughts that I can come up with, that would help explain why Jesus acted the way that he did. The first idea would be that Jesus said this to draw the prejudice out against those who were non-Jewish, maybe those who were females, in those that were in the crowd. The people present, it's interesting because the location Jesus was in was not very close, like it was kind of on the outskirts of Israel. It was on the outskirts of the Jewish territory, you could say, and it was a very Gentile place. And it's very possible that those living in that place had a very, like at least the Jews in that place had a very negative view of the Gentiles. Especially since there was probably a lot greater number of Gentiles in this area because it was a port town on the Mediterranean. And Jesus answering this way could draw out the attention and the prejudice out in that group of people that then Jesus could address later in his talks with those people as he was staying in that house. The second idea that I could see Jesus answering in this way is to draw our attention living today towards the animosity that was present between the Jews and those who were non-Jewish. I know that one of the reasons why the Gospels were written in the way that they were was to help those who came later to understand the world that these people lived in. the world that Jesus came into and the love that Jesus displayed towards those who were Jews and non-Jewish, even if this event seems to be a little bit opposite or a little bit standing opposed to that all-inclusiveness. But really, the third way might be the reason. I like the third way the best out of all of the reasons, and that is that Jesus' actions here challenge our faith. It's as though Jesus knows that faith that doesn't receive any challenges or faith that doesn't receive any pushback is unknown, you could say. We don't really know what kind of faith is present if that faith never experiences any challenges or any pushback. But if a faith that receives pushback buckles, you could say, or if faith receives pushback or a challenge and it says, okay, well, I'm just going to give up and go my own way, that faith is weak. That faith is worthless, you could say, because at the moment that something pushes against it, whatever that thing was, broke it. And in this event, we find Jesus, probably knowing how strong this woman's faith was, deciding to give this woman a little bit of a challenge to show everyone present how strong her faith really was. And I suspect that Jesus could have gone back and forth with her for many more insults, you could say, beyond what this initial conversation has, that would then help everyone realize present that this woman wasn't going to leave empty-handed. This woman's faith was so strong that there was no way she was going to leave, regardless of the amount of insults or degradation or any of that, because this woman wanted healing and peace for her daughter. And as soon as she had received that assurance from Jesus, that promise from Jesus, that was enough for her, and then she goes away happy. I don't believe this woman was offended at Jesus' words, because she had likely experienced that from anyone and everyone Jewish leading up to that point. The eyes looking down on her and the sort of underhanded mocking, you could say. And I don't think that she expected it maybe from Jesus, but I don't think she was necessarily surprised by it either. But she wasn't going to let any of that stop her from getting help for her daughter. And Jesus wanted to draw that powerful faith out, because most of those present who were following Jesus, disciples potentially included, but especially the crowds that were following Jesus, didn't have that strong of a faith. And so Jesus does something very un-Christ-like for what we would expect him to do, and he challenges this woman's faith with an insult, and she responds in kind, showing him how much faith she had. And so for us living today, when our faith is challenged, we could let that challenge break our faith. We could let that challenge say, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense, and so I'm just going to leave my faith by the wayside and go somewhere else. But if we choose to let the challenges break our faith was weak to begin with, and we probably have just missed experiencing a miracle. So that's what I wanted to draw our attention to, the challenge that I see included in this Bible story, this event in Jesus' life that was preserved to teach us something. And I believe that it's teaching us to persist with our faith. And so whether you're facing challenging times, whether you're facing challenges to your faith right now here in this world today, let me encourage you to keep holding onto your faith, to keep pushing forward, because when we push forward and let our faith be stronger than the challenges, I don't have any reason to doubt that we will see a miracle. And if not a miracle, then when Jesus returns, he will have returned to bring us home. To bring us home into a world that is perfect. A world that doesn't have any of this pain and disease and pandemics and social isolating and death. And a world where we can be on an adventure with God forever. So thank you for tuning in, whether you're tuning in on Twitter or Periscope at BibleStudyCam, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube or watching this on live or on replay, thank you for tuning in. And with that said, if I missed sharing something in this passage that you want to draw my attention to, then jump into any one of those comment boxes, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. I know Periscope's comment box is going to end when this live stream ends, but any one of these other comment boxes, jump in and let me know, and periodically throughout the day I'll jump in and interact with you. And if this video has challenged or inspired you, or you know of somebody who needs that little bit of extra encouragement because their faith is beginning to waver, I would challenge you or ask you to share this video with them, because together, while we are living in this sin-filled world, let's keep our perspectives focused beyond the craziness of today and on eternity, and let's help one another grow closer to Jesus. And so those are the ideas and the thoughts that I wanted to share with you this morning, but especially if your faith is being tested, hold on, because when we hold on and when we push past the challenges, when we let our faith be stronger than the challenges, then we open up the door for God's blessing and for God's miracles, and we open up the door for experiencing eternity. And so thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back tomorrow with another powerful insight from the Gospels that can help us move forward towards Jesus' soon return. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.